All right, Ishmael Part 2. And the takeaway we want to make sure we have from this chapter, or series of chapters, is the definitions he gives us. He tells us how powerful a story is. You can captivate a nation with a story. You can convince people to behave certain ways. I mean, stories are very powerful. Consider me as a kid thinking I could beat kids in my neighborhood up just by putting a Batman cape on. And if you can imagine me with the Batman cape out in the streets of Birmingham late at night, you can see exactly how dangerous such stories might be. He also tells us to enact means to behave as if that story were real, right? So enacting that story of Batman would land me in jail or worse. And Ishmael says that when we enact the story of our culture, the one that Mother Culture hums in our ears, that there are consequences there as well. Speaking of Mother Culture, an entire culture is a group of people who are enacting the same story. Anyway, he asks for the narrator to come up with his creation myth. And of course, we all know he settles on the Big Bang, and he's going to explain how that's mythology as well. But for the moment, let's look at two creation myths, origin stories, and just see if we can sort of make sense of what Ishmael's claiming here, using them as models. The first creation story is probably the most important one. Adam is made out of clay, and he's given a very serious job. He has to name all of the animals. Names are important, all right? Remember, Ishmael's initiation into language starts with being named. When he recognizes his name, he recognizes other people have names, and then that starts the whole journey. Well, anyway, Adam's lonely, so God creates a second human being, Eve. And things are cool, except that there's one rule in the garden, which, right, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good or evil. But there's a really persuasive snake who convinces Eve to do just that. And then Eve very persuasively convinces Adam to do the same. And because of Eve's curiosity, they're all kicked out of the garden, all right? But Adam's job of naming the animals doesn't end in the garden. And so they're both meant to have more humans and to take control over the natural world, right? They do agriculture, they farm, they domesticate animals. They're sort of lords of creation. So that's creation story number one. Let's look at the Greek counterpart. In the Greek model, we start off with Epimetheus, who is the Titan brother of Prometheus. And since Prometheus, here, I'll put his name in here since it's such a weird one. Since Prometheus helped Zeus in the War of the Titans, both brothers were rewarded with a very special job, creating humans and animals. Prometheus, having foresight, was given the job of making humans. We're special right from the get-go. And Epimetheus was tasked with creating the animals. Now, they're both given to share a box of traits. But as we've learned already, brothers aren't that great at sharing all the time. So Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, dumps all the traits and the strengths and the skills and the talents on the animals. All right, we got birds with wings who can fly. We've got snakes with poison and fangs, claws, fur, the ability to see at night, supersonic hearing, etc. Animals are just loaded with all these cool abilities. And so by the time Prometheus gets his hands on the box, there's nothing left, right? Just like a little fly. And Prometheus has to steal fire just to make sure we don't die in the wild. Now, because Zeus hates humans and wanted to torture these two even more, he created a woman named Pandora, whose name means gift to all, and that's ironically stated. She also is given a box. except she is told not to open that box. Kind of sounds familiar, right? Don't open the box, not told why, just listen to the gods. They know good and well what they're going to do. So with Epimetheus' impulsivity and Pandora's curiosity, they open the box and out springs chaos, plague, sickness, death, all the nasty stuff of the world that we're confused about. Where would this evil stuff come from? It would come from that box. She closes it just in time to keep that last thing, hope. Now that's a fun little symbol to interpret. Why is hope still in the box? Is it because there's no hope in the world, only chaos? Or is it because no matter how bad things look, there's always a little hope somewhere, even if we can't see it? Whatever you decide to go with in terms of interpretation, we have two very similar stories where men are given control of the natural world, of animals, of being lords of these creations. And women are introduced, become curious, and start a bunch of chaos. Edith Hamilton makes it very clear that the Greeks were pretty sexist in their worldview. The birthplace of democracy, nonetheless, didn't let women vote. And I think that is the key to understanding what Ishmael is talking about over here. When we enact this story as if these are our very first parents, the first human beings, the DNA from which we all experiment, then we're telling a story of ourselves. And in this story of ourselves, women are characterized as the cause of everything evil in the world, which leads to an Athenian democracy, nonetheless not letting women vote, and all kinds of horrible evils. Now, in our story of the Big Bang, women are not the cause of all the chaos in the world, right? That's what makes it so awesome. However, Ishmael is telling us that even the Big Bang has some prejudices that are affecting the Lever culture. Mostly this idea that humans get to name animals whatever they want, and humans are responsible for all the animals' strengths and talents, and that humans are therefore responsible for, not responsible for, but given charge of the natural world. They own it. They can do with it as they please, right? Without taking responsibility. No, just a little fun side note, right? In all these early creation myths that you guys are reading, there's also a lot about the earth versus the Olympians and the Titans and monsters. And we get these scenes where Mother Earth has to create great monsters to fight Zeus and the Olympians. So you can imagine, right? You got a bunch of humans doing exactly what Adam was charged with doing. They look at this volcano and they call it Typhon. They look at this mountain, they call it Atlas. They look at this cloud and they call it Zeus. And all of these terrible, frightening natural disasters and elements and phenomenon are given human names called Mother Earth and whatnot, and heavily personified. And this is another thing Edith Hamilton points out that's so great about Greek culture in her estimation, was that Greeks looked at the natural world and they didn't see horrors and things that would kill us only or necessarily. They saw themselves. They made humans out of the world around them. And I think Ishmael thinks that's kind of a problem.